U.S. President Joe Biden used a first official phone call with President Volodymyr Zelenskiy on Friday to offer staunch support in Ukraine's standoff over Russian troops near its border. Washington has been Ukraine's most powerful ally since Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, but ties were overshadowed by Ukraine's unwilling involvement in events leading to the impeachment trial of Biden's predecessor Donald Trump. The conversation came after Western nations and transatlantic military alliance NATO voiced concern over Russian troop movements near the eastern Donbass region, where Ukrainian troops are in conflict with Russian-backed forces. President Biden affirmed the United States' unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity in the face of Russia's ongoing aggression in the Donbass and Crimea, a U.S. statement said. The call lasted about 50 minutes, according to Zelenskyy's chief of staff. "We discussed the situation in Donbass in detail. President Biden assured me that Ukraine will never be left alone against Russia's aggression," the Ukrainian president said in a video statement afterward. Russia said this week that an escalation in Donbass could destroy Ukraine and warned against any NATO deployment. Ukraine, Western countries, and NATO accuse Russia of sending troops and heavy weapons to prop up proxies in Donbass who seized a swath of eastern Ukraine in 2014. Russia says it only provides political and humanitarian support to separatist fighters in what it casts as an internal conflict. "We stand shoulder to shoulder when it comes to preservation of our democracies," Zelensky wrote on Twitter after the call. Biden, a point person for Ukraine when vice president for Barack Obama, also stressed Washington's support for Zelenskyy's anti-corruption and reform agenda. The Ukrainian World Congress, the global voice for 20 million Ukrainians who live abroad, is deeply concerned with Russia's recent buildup of military forces at Ukraine's border in violation of its ceasefire agreement, the organization said in an April 2 statement. Equally troubling are the series of provocative statements by Russian President Vladimir Putin, other officials, and Russian media personalities regarding Ukraine. All these developments have raised the prospect that Moscow might launch a new offensive in Ukraine. The organization notes that, in recent weeks, Russia has been amassing unprecedented forces along the border with Ukraine, particularly in the occupied Crimean Peninsula, and in the Rostov, Bryansk and Voronezh regions of the Russian Federation. Ukrainian World Congress President Paul Grod said that the association welcomes the strong statements by international leaders, including U.S. President Joe Biden and the foreign ministers of Canada and the UK, condemning Russia's recent actions. These reassurances to the Ukrainian people are comforting as they face an increasingly belligerent and aggressive Russian leadership. "We call on all European leaders as well as the entire global community to stand with Ukraine against Russia's increasing military aggression." The Ukrainian World Congress urges Ukrainian communities and friends of Ukraine worldwide to closely monitor the current situation and call on their respective governments to support Ukraine in defending its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Meanwhile, France and Germany expressed concern over the aggravation of the situation on the line of contact in Donbass and voiced their support for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. This is according to a joint statement foreign ministers of France and Germany, Jean-Yves Le Drian and Heiko Maas, published on Sunday night. According to the document, France and Germany are concerned about an increase in the number of ceasefire violations, while the situation in eastern Ukraine has stabilized since July 2020. France and Germany are monitoring the situation very closely, in particular the movements of Russian troops, and call on the parties to restrain and immediately reduce tensions, the communiqué says. "We reaffirm our support for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders," the statement says. The two foreign ministries stressed that they continue to strive for the full implementation of the terms of the Minsk agreements and support the ongoing negotiations in this regard. They welcomed the decision to renew the mandate of the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission, SMM, to Ukraine. The ministers also called for the end of obstacles to freedom of movement of its participants. Since July 27, 2020, the contact group on ironing out the situation in eastern Ukraine introduced additional measures to control the ceasefire in Donbass. Under the agreement, the Donbass conflicting parties are banned from carrying out offensive and reconnaissance operations, using any type of aircraft, opening fire, and deploying heavy weapons in populated localities. One of the key provisions is the use of disciplinary measures for ceasefire violations. Furthermore, the backfire in the case of an offensive is allowed only after the commander's direct order. The situation in Donbass aggravated at the end of February. Shelling was recorded almost every day, in particular with the use of mortars and grenade launchers. The parties blamed the aggravation on each other. On Saturday, the mission of the Donetsk People's Republic, DPR, to the Joint Center on Ceasefire Coordination and Control, JCCC, said that the Ukrainian armed forces had violated the ceasefire 8 times in the past 24 hours, firing nearly 60 shells into the DPR.